So we did talk about what multiplication is, and division, it's kind of like separating stuff into a certain number of groups. We take the first number and divide it or separate it into equal groups of that second number. Yeah, okay. So multiplication or division. Now here, this one, number one, is saying, well, we're going to take the opposite of 7 groups of 4. So can we find 7 groups of 4? Yeah, 7 groups of 4, 4, 8, 12, 28. There we go. Bam. But it's the opposite of 28, which is negative 28. There we go. Well, this one is like taking 5 groups of negative 3. We can take that straight across. So even though negatives usually mean some kind of oppositeness. So let's take 5 groups of negative 3. Well, there's negative 3. Let's take 5 of those. There's negative 6, 2, 3, negative 9, 1, 2, 3, negative 12, 1, 2, 3, negative 15. So here's how this works. We start at negative 3. There's one group of negative 3. 2 groups, 3, 4, 5. And we end at negative 15. It may be more helpful for you guys to think of this again in terms of how many negatives there are. If there's an odd number of negatives, now I'm just talking about this one negative, that would be 1 negative, then we know the answer is negative. If there were an even number of negatives, we know the answer is a positive. Okay? So whichever way you guys want to look at it is okay with me. Some people like to group them in, I don't know, groups like this, but whatever. All right, if I had 32 of something, I don't know, 32, well, dollars, but I divided them amongst 4 negative people, then, well, each dollar will come out as a negative. But 32, well, we could look at it like this as well. Divided by 4. We'll just make the answer negative because we know it's 4 negative people. And 4 doesn't go into 3, but it will go into 32 8 times. So 8 times negative 4 would be, I'm sorry, negative 8 times negative 4 is a positive 32, which is why we subtract that out to get a 0 remaining. And the answer there is negative 8. Division by 0 is one of those tricky ones. Let's look at this in terms of long division. Whether that's positive or negative doesn't really make any difference, but this is the long division, okay? So we look at this and say to ourselves, self, how many times does 0 go into negative 3?
Nada.
Now we have to be careful on this. This is a trick question, by the way. So it goes like 0. Can it go into 3 once? Yeah, sure. What about twice? Yeah. How many times then? It's infinite. It can go into 3 as many times as you want. It just never gets there, right? So it's continuing to go into it. It's increasing all the way up into infinity, which means, well, infinity, unfortunately for math people, it's one of those undefined values because it's constantly getting bigger and bigger. Infinity is a pretty interesting number. Do you guys know anyone that's ever counted to infinity? I only know one person. Do you guys know who it is? Chuck Norris.
Oh.
Right? Well, he's done it twice, though, so the first time, I guess, was too easy. So there's more division stuff, but again, we're looking at 2 negatives. That's an even number of negatives, so we can get rid of that garbage. And we could rewrite this, if it helps you out to rewrite it, as 16 divided by 4. Or if it helps you to write it as 16 divided by 4, then do it that way as well. Okay? But we know that 4 goes into 16 4 times. Subtract the 16, we got 0 remaining. And our answer is 4. Again, not everyone needed to do all that work, but should see some of it. Here's another tricky one, but only because 0 is kind of a tricky number. So if we rewrote this, we would have 0 divided by 10. And since we got this negative, we just know the answer is negative. How many times is 10 going to 0? 0. And what's 0 times 10? 0. So when we subtract it out, we get 0 remaining. That's great. And as it turns out, 0 is neither positive or negative, so it's just 0. But we have to be careful, right? In this one, the 0 is in the top part of that fraction, which is the numerator. On that other problem that we did, it was in the denominator, which is different, okay? So if we look at this in terms of long division, hopefully it kind of helps us just to see what's happening there. All right, so that we can ignore the negatives, okay? Let's figure out how many negatives we have. 4. 4 is even. So the answer is a positive, okay?
Okay, so if there
Very good. So now this, again, the purpose of this is to allow us to just ignore all of the negatives. So I'm just going to erase those and focus on the numbers, okay? Because sometimes it's that negative stuff that gets in our way of our thinking, and going back and forth can really mess us up. So now that we've taken care of that, let's go ahead and start the multiplication process, because that's what is between each of these, just multiplication. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then we'll multiply that by 1 and 2. 6 times 1 is still 6, so 6 times 2, which is 6 sets of 2 is 12. And again, we know that's positive because there were an even number of negatives being multiplied. So on this one, how many negatives are being multiplied? 2. 2 is even, so we know the answer is going to be a positive. And again, this allows us to just get rid of the negatives and just focus on the multiplication. So 10 times 3, 10 groups of 3 is 30. Of course, we still have that times the 5 here at the end. So 30 times 5, 30 groups of 5. Yeah, 150. Where the negative is on these exponent ones will determine how many negatives there are. So let's look at, I don't know, let's start with 21. So this one, we got that set of parentheses, and inside we got a negative 3. So really this is just negative 3 times negative 3. We got 2 groups of those parentheses being multiplied. Now again, this gives us 2 negatives, which means our answer is a positive. 3 times 3 is 9. So the answer is a positive 9. That one has a parentheses inside, that has a negative inside the parentheses. 22 does not have a set of parentheses. So what this means is that I've got the opposite of 4 times 4. All right, without that set of parentheses, we only have one negative in this case. So 4 times 4 is 16, and the opposite of that is negative 16. So again, since we got that negative in front, okay, it just means that it's telling us that our answer is going to be a negative, is what it's really saying. Because, again, there's no parentheses there. So this is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. That's not too hard to calculate, 1. But again, we know our answer is negative. There's our answer. Now this one, even if this was in parentheses, like right there, we get the same answer, because now there's 5 negatives, and 5 is odd, so the answer is a negative anyway. So really we just have to worry about these when the exponent is even. A little different, but we have that negative in front, right? So it's just going to stay there, and in parentheses we got negative 2, but it's being multiplied by itself there, right? So now we got 2 negative 2's. Well, how many negatives do we really have right here? 3. 3 is odd, so the answer is a negative. And then we just do 2 times 2, which is 4. Done. A farmer hears a weather report saying that temperatures will be decreasing approximately 2 degrees every hour for the next 3 hours. What time number represents the total change in temperature expected over the next 3 hours? Now, because this is multiplication and division, they want you to use it, but we don't really have to. So we can look at this in terms of first hour, the second hour, and the third hour. Again, some of you guys don't really need this either, but I hope it kind of helps you guys see what's happening. So it says it's going to decrease 2 degrees every hour for 3 hours. So the first hour, it's going to decrease 2 degrees. The next hour, it's going to decrease 2 degrees. And the third hour, decrease 2 degrees. So overall, how much did it decrease? Well, 2, 4, 6. It decreased by 6 degrees. What sign number? I guess we really don't need that degree right there. It would just be represented by -6. Of course, if you use multiplication, you'd have had 3 groups of -2, which is still -6. 7 friends have a debt totaling -$35, but they share it equally. What number represents the change in dollars for each friend? So we got $35 of debt to divide amongst the 7 friends. Well, 7 goes into 35 5 times. So yeah, we'd have 0 remaining. So each friend holds the $5 in debt. So what, it didn't ask for what number represents the change in dollars for each friend. So -$5 would work.